Okay. So again, welcome everyone, and welcome Carmen. And first of all, we'll start our meeting with any happy thoughts moving forward. Anybody got anything to share? Give me a high sign and we'll get you on. Peter and then Karen.
Yeah, finally we were able to submit the the global grant proposal for the Pay 10 Rachel project. It was submitted on, I guess it was basically submitted on Sunday, and we got all the 16 authorizations from the various districts. There are 5 districts that are contributing to it, about 10 different clubs, and we got all those authorizations by Monday night. So it's in the works in Rotary to get approval. The Blenheim and Tilbury clubs were 2 of the contributing clubs in our district.
That's great. Thanks for your work on that, Peter. And Karen Kirkwood-White.
Thank you. Just a short note to let everybody know that our little small home development off Taylor Avenue, the Opportunity Villages Community Land Trust, submitted an application to the David Suzuki Foundation to see if we could win an award. And out of 135 submissions in Ontario, we were chosen as one of the 10 finalists. So there will be a jury decision for a grand prize of $5,000 and a People's Choice Award of $2,500. If you recall the voting that took place for Laurie Marshall for the hospital, people were encouraged to go online and vote for Laurie to receive the $5,000 for the hospital. The same is true for the People's Choice Award, and the voting will take place between June 1st and June 15th. So I'll let people know a few days ahead of time about when to do that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, if you could check out our website at ovclt.ca. There's information there about the small home development. And because we want to make the common unit the energy hub, this was the reason why we submitted the application to the David Suzuki Foundation, because we want it to be a net zero or net zero ready development. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. We could use the money.
Yeah, let us know, Karen, and we'll ask for the votes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other happy thoughts here? Just one thing I'll mention. Tomorrow, Taylor Klucher from the CMHA is going to drop off some lawn signs, and I'll have them at the Rotary office. I'm not going to get them until about 11:15 to 11:30. If anybody wants one, let me know and we'll arrange either a drop off or a pickup or something, and get the signs out to you if you'd like to help support that event. And I was doing a little digging and looking at the other Rotary clubs within the district. We put a push on and we're able to get other Rotary clubs to come in and join us for this event. And the little mighty house of Dresden is surpassed all clubs right now with their donations, and they're showing about an 8-member team. We're currently sitting at about a 14-member team, and I think we're sitting back waiting. We'll get our donations going, but it'll come. But I just thought hats off to Dresden for what they're doing. And the other happy thought I had was part of our 100th anniversary, reaching out to the schools, the high schools. We now have 5 names in from École Secondaire Catholique de Pancourt, and we have 5 students from that high school this year that will get the $250 bursary. They are Kobe Millette Maury, Kennedy Berm, Alicia Pierce, Cassidy Ashley, and Jennifer Moss. So many of you will remember Kennedy Berm, a young lady that through our group went to Germany 2 years ago. And I'd met her previously, but I also had the opportunity to meet her in Hanover, Germany while she was there and I was attending the Rotary Conference. So congratulations to those 5 students. Bruce will be in the office tomorrow. We'll be writing some more checks. Any other happy notes? Allison?
I was just on our social media channel and there's a group, a graphic design group of Rotarians around the world that share, you know, social media content and things like that we can share. And one of them said, oh, we keep getting confused with this Rotary Club of Blenheim in Ontario. I'm like, where is that? There's a Rotary Club of Blenheim. Carmen, was it in Australia or something?
It's New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah. So they weren't complaining. They were just laughing about how they even got like charitable donations intended for the Rotary Club of Blenheim, Ontario in New Zealand. And so they said, I wonder how many other Rotary clubs have similar names. And I said, well, we often get messages in our inbox from a Rotary Club of England somewhere. And I often would have to respond and say, sorry, we're not the ones you're looking for. But we were talking about how we should start twinning all of our clubs that have the same names and see what we could do. But it was kind of funny because everyone started commenting on the different clubs that had the same name. But it was just a funny little conversation to figure, not because I'm like, I know them. But it was pretty funny to learn about all the different named clubs that are the same around the world.
So I need Barry to come in here with a little bit of information, if you would, Barry. Once you unmute.
On the name of twinning, I'm in the process of communicating with the Rotary Club of Chatham in New Brunswick and also the Rotary Club in Massachusetts, also by the name of Chatham. So maybe we can get a 3-way going here.
Yeah, so that I was hoping we may get a meeting in early next year, sort of the July through September or July through June of next year. We'll try to have an event where those 3 clubs, and maybe we'll reach out to England, although with the timetable, I'm not sure. Maybe if we had a noon hour meeting, we could get them in. But yeah, it's interesting with that side of things. Last call on the happy thoughts, Tom Story and then Janet.
Sorry, Janet. I just wanted to say, I don't have much really happy stuff going on, nothing too sad, but I've been to Chatham, Massachusetts, which is a lovely spot on Cape Cod, actually. We were there for a wedding umpteen years ago. And I've also been to Chatham, England, too. And I'm working on Chatham, New Brunswick. So that may be a way off in the future. But that sounds pretty happy.
That's good. Chatham, New Brunswick, be happy to have you, Tom.
Well, the jury's out on that one, but we'll have to wait and see.
All righty. And Janet McGuigan-Kelly?
Oh, thanks, Brett. Some of you heard me say this a little bit earlier, but I had a message from our Rotary Exchange student from a few years back, Tyra Raymond in Zurich. And she says has just finished her final exams for her last 3 years of her apprenticeship. And she has only 2 more weeks of exams, and then she'll do a school that goes 2 years. Then she goes to school 2 days a week and 3 days a week and works at the Lindt chocolate head office in the Department of Hospitality and Events. And she says she just signed the contract and is very excited.
Stay in touch with her, Janet.
Yes.
Stay in touch with anyone who works at a chocolate factory.
Exactly.
Very important.
Yeah, she's just got to bring more in that suitcase when she comes.
Right.
All right, so moving forward here, just our last call on our May birthdays. We had Allison for May 21, Janet McGuigan-Kelly, May 22, and Paul Mayran was May 29. And our club anniversaries, we had Tracy Walker, 2 years, Karen McDonald, 3 years, Beth Herman, 9 years, Darlene Smith, 5 years, and Diane McGuigan, 29 years.
Wow.
So at this time, I'm going to ask Janet McGuigan Kelly if you would introduce our guest speaker.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Am I off mute? Yeah. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce Carmen Titus as our guest speaker. Many of you know Carmen. Of course, she's been a past president of the Blenheim Rotary Club, probably more than once, right, Carmen? 4 times. Are you the president right now?
No, Ron Van de Hogen is.
Okay. So I've known Carmen about 25 years. I think the first time I met Carmen, she asked if she could come into my office and use some area to study for her, I don't know if it was her Law Society or her Bar Admission course. Do you remember that, Carmen? Doesn't even remember.
I blocked out anything with the Law Society.
So Carmen attended law school in what she describes as later in life. Although I can't think it would be that later. You must have been a little kid when you started school. And I was called to bar in 1994. Carmen went into private practice in Blenheim, family law, some criminal law, wills and estates, and was also a lawyer for the Ontario Children's Lawyers Office. She left private practice in 2002 to join the Chatham-Kent Legal Clinic, taking on administrative law, disability appeals, both provincial and federal, landlord and tenant law, and other Ontario Works or Ontario disability cases. She's obviously a very caring and empathetic person, because that is really hard work. Also at the clinic, she looked after helping people with wills and powers of attorney for low-income clients. Carmen retired in December 2019, and we were all very sad, but 6 months later, we lured her back to her current position on a contract basis. And she is the project lead lawyer for the Sexual Harassment in the Workplace initiative at the Chatham-Kent Legal Clinic. And this initiative is funded by the Department of Justice Canada. So I'm very pleased to introduce my friend and colleague, Carmen Titus.
Thank you. And thank you for those kind words. Now, I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Can I share your screen?
Yes, you're good to share.
You'll have to probably walk me through this.
On the bottom
Share.
button.
Nope, there we go. I'm learning.
That's coming.
I'm learning. Start screen sharing. Come on.
So that's the screen that's on your computer just now.
Okay,
And you just
let's
need
try
to,
this. There we go. And then I'm going to make it full. I'm sure people are laughing because I'm just, I really retired because I didn't want to learn too many more things about computers. And here I am. So can you see my screen now?
beautifully.
Okay, great. I can't see anything but my screen, so I don't know if you guys can see me or not, but we're going to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. We're going to talk about what it is and some other aspects. It's rather a sensitive subject. And so if you need a break, please take one. Turn off your video for a minute and then rejoin us when you're able. Everybody's had such different experiences with sexual harassment, whether it's in the workplace or their personal lives. And then I can trigger emotional responses unintentionally. So I want to ensure that everybody feels safe and comfortable. So please be respectful, open to new thoughts, and non-judgmental. And if you have questions throughout, we can start off taking those and see how far we get. Oh, good, it's working. So this is our agenda for the day. What is sexual harassment? What constitutes a workplace? How do we recognize it? The issue of consent, how the workplace is affected, what we or you can do about it, and then the project background. So what is sexual harassment? This is not the legal definition. This is the essence of the legal definition. The legal definition is very unwieldy to say, and this one is a little better. So you can see it there. And it's any unwanted or unwelcome behavior or comment that's sexual in nature, can be explicit or implicit. And the submission or rejection of the behavior could be used as a basement for employment decisions. And the conduct would have the purpose of unreasonably interfering with a work performance and could create a hostile or what we call offensive working environment. So we're going to talk a little bit more about unwelcome. That's the critical word. Doesn't mean involuntary, because a person could consent or agree to certain conduct and even actively participate in it, even though it's offensive or objectionable. Sometimes in the workplace, there are jokes going around. It just matters that the sexual conduct, in my example, the joke, was unwelcome, and whether the person subjected to it considers it unwelcome. So it all depends on the circumstances. And the most important part of what's up on the screen is that we're taking into account the perspective of the person being harassed. And with the joke example, you might not even think it is that. This is an important screen for employers because every employer has a legal responsibility to maintain a workplace that's free of sexual harassment. And employers should note that the Act makes it very clear that employers have the greatest responsibility to play with respect to the health and safety in the workplace. All the workplace parties have a role to play in ensuring that the workplace is safe, but employers have the legal responsibility to do so. And I'm just going to be there. And within the Act, it's laid out quite clearly, and that's because of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. And I want to talk just a little bit about those four. Sex simply refers to the person's anatomy. Sexual orientation refers to the emotional or romantic attractions that the person feels. And the gender expression is how we show our gender to the world. No right way, wrong way to do this. It's your expression. And the gender identity is how a person chooses to identify their sense of self. I am a she, her. And that's listed on some of my documents and not all of them. Then we need to talk about what actually constitutes a workplace. So you can see some examples up on the screen: applying and interviewing for a job, volunteer work. So those people who are sitting on boards, remember the volunteer work is part of the legislation. Socializing after work, and that one can be a bit tricky because some things that are acceptable socially may not, and I'll say may not because it depends on the circumstances, but may not be acceptable at work. Playing sports with coworkers, off-site meetings, social media and texting, and right now our homes. So anywhere that people work that's linked to work or employment constitutes a workplace. And employers need to know that they can be held responsible for actions that take place outside the old office building setting. So then, how do we recognize what it looks like in the workplace? So there are four types to watch out for. There's the verbal, nonverbal, visual, written, and physical. Now, you may see in other webinars or articles that there's three, and sometimes they class some of them together. I've chosen to list them out that way because to me that makes the most sense. So the first one that we want to talk about is verbal. And I want to grab a few of my, here we go. So those are just some verbal examples. Comments about clothing. And again, some of those can be acceptable in certain situations and not in others. If someone comments on your appearance, it depends how the person accepting that comment takes it. And by that, I mean, if somebody said, oh, that's a really nice dress, okay, that's fine. But what if somebody said, oh, that's a really nice sweater? You know, it depends on the comment. And the other one that I like to point out as an example is when referring to an adult as a girl, a hunk, a doll, a babe, or honey. Just be careful of some of those comments. Whistling at somebody, the cat calls, telling jokes, and the inappropriate gender-related comments or jokes. Even the kissing sounds, the howling, the smacking lips, all of those in the workplace, not appropriate. And I think the one that's up there, it's also, yeah, telling rumors about a person's personal or sexual life. So that's verbal. Non-verbal, looking up and down a person's body. They call that elevator eyes in some of the articles, which I thought was kind of interesting. Staring at somebody, stalking, leering, blocking a person's path can be a non-verbal sexual harassment. Giving of personal gifts. And then there's the facial expressions. I've used the Army picture in this one because we've all been reading lately of not only our Canadian Army and military, but the US as well. And then the visual or the written. So sending texts or emails of a sexual nature, inappropriate screensavers. I don't know that we have screensavers that much anymore, but I thought it was one that should be included. Wearing clothing, you know, certain clothing that might be inappropriate. Drawing violent or pornographic images, or displaying pornography or sexual images or offensive jokes in print or electronic form on your desk, in your locker, whatever. And now, of course, with the virtual world that we live in, sending emails and texts of a sexual nature, it can be very invasive because those come into the person's home. It's not at the office anymore, not for everyone. Sometimes they come into your home. So don't be too quick to click. And then the physical, which we can all know about, unwanted touching, giving a massage around the neck, that's a pretty common one. Demanding hugs, any unnecessary physical contact, or even, we talked about blocking a person's path, standing too close to a person on purpose. That as well is an example of physical harassment. So we were talking about sometimes behavior is acceptable socially, but not in the workplace. When does it become sexual harassment? Sometimes it's really obvious, but if the behavior is a little more subtle and you're not sure, then your feelings are your best guide. If you are the person who's being subjected to the harassment, you may feel uncomfortable, you may feel offended, you may feel embarrassed. And so you think of those negative feelings as warning signals. So that's for the person who's being harassed or experiencing the behavior. The next screen is talking about the person who we would call the perpetrator. So it's intent versus impact. How do you know if your comments are unwelcome? So you could ask yourself, is there an equal power balance between me and the person I'm interacting with? What is the power dynamic? Am I the boss and you are the person who works for me? Am I the client and you are my waitress at the restaurant, my server? And then ask yourself, is there an equal initiation and participation between you and the person you're interacting with? Does that person feel equal part of the conversation, or the actions? And then perhaps you could ask yourself, have I examined and acknowledged my sex role stereotypes? So if I looked beyond for maybe at the myths, societal myths. So this one is a video on consent, because that's what we're talking about in essence. We're talking about the consent of a person who is experiencing this. This is the teacup one. Some of you may have seen it. I know Janet has. But it's worth watching again if you have seen it. And I'm going to I'm going to play it. And then I'm going to expand it and hope I can get back.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea. Thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you could make them a cup of tea or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no, thank you, then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes, please, that's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it going, but you wanted tea last week. Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, but you wanted tea last night. If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
Okay. So that video, it's for many other things besides sexual workplace and sexual harassment in the workplace. May is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So it's good to have something just simply that's general and understanding about consent. So let's, okay, come on, Carmen, now what's going on? Here we go. So you need to understand consent, voluntary, affirmative, and continuous. And the continuous part's important in the workplace when we're talking about that joke setting again. And some people take part in the the joke telling, whatever, it makes them uncomfortable. And over time, it makes them more and more uncomfortable. And then they speak up. And so people say, well, wait a minute, you thought this joke was funny last week. Well, that's where the continuous comes in. And that's where consent comes in. Consent is continuous. So then we'll talk about how it affects the workplace and the employee, the person who's working there. It affects their mental health, can affect them physically, where they become physically ill. There's feelings of humiliation, isolation, alienation, feelings of fear, loss of confidence, and then increased absenteeism and sick leave, because nobody wants to go to work where they're in that situation. It affects the employer, the impact for the employer, that there's reduced productivity. There's performance areas. Again, the increased absenteeism, you see the relation between the two. There's an increased turnover in employees, public image issues, the McDonald's issues that are going on right now, especially in the States. And there are grievances, arbitration, court issues with legal costs and damages. And for the employer, I've noticed the awards in the Human Rights Tribunal cases, they have been increasing dramatically in the last 5 years. Something that might have been settled or resolved for 10,000 or under, you can now be looking at triple that, double that. The awards are becoming more and more. I think the last one that I saw was for 50,000. The highest one was for 270,000, I think. So employers need to know that there are costs to workplace sexual harassment, both in people costs and monetary costs. Does anybody have any questions at this point? No? Okay. So the workplace opportunities to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace, employers are required to have policies in place. The requirement isn't legislated necessarily, but it's referenced in many, many practice guidelines and templates. And it says that the employer must have a policy and program and train the employees. And given that those policies need to be reviewed annually, our assumption is that the employees would be trained annually, especially in the cases of changes to policies and the legislations. So employers should identify how the instruction or training would be repeated, done regularly, especially when there are significant changes to the risks encountered, significant changes to workplace violence policy program, or when circumstances indicate that additional instruction or training is needed when the procedures aren't being followed. So you need to have those policies and programs in place. You need to educate not only your employees, but even more importantly, the management, the supervisors, the lead hands, those people in positions of authority over others. And you need to model the behavior. And by that, I mean walk the walk and talk the talk. If you have a workplace sexual harassment policy in place and you're the owner of the building or the business, or you're the manager, make sure you know what the policy says and make sure that you follow the policies so that your workers, your employees, and other management staff can see that they're being, is it led from the top down? There's a phrase, you take your leadership from the top down. So you model the behavior. Don't minimize complaints. If you have a complaint come to you, don't minimize it, take it seriously, and move on it. Have an open door policy so that people feel they can come in and that would be management or staff, and do effective investigations. For the individual, if you're being harassed, you can ask the harasser to stop if you feel safe. Basically, after all of these, except for the latter, I'm going to have comma if you feel safe. Inform your employer. Try to resolve through the policies. If you have a union, you can take your complaint to the union. You need to participate in any investigation. You need to be a willing participant in that investigation, and you need to get legal advice about your rights. We're not seeing province-wide too many people calling, saying, I've been harassed, what do I do about that? And one of the reasons could be that Ontario has really good social media in place. We have CLEO, which is our legal system education. We have the Human Rights Tribunal, which has a really good information session in it. Federally, we have good information as well. We had a meeting yesterday with the shoe workers around Ontario, and we were getting some information about a new artificial intelligence, I don't know what you call artificial intelligence, beings, program, whatever, coming into effect through the Canadian Women's Foundation in Toronto. And they're calling it ROSA, the ROSA Project, where people will be able to type in and I'll use the word talk or communicate with this artificial intelligence. And it's in the very initial planning stages. And they were talking about the fact that Ontario is very lucky in all of these supports that it has out there that people can access. Other provinces and territories don't have that same knowledge that they can efficiently and quickly access. And so ROSA will be even more important for them. There's also a company in Montreal that we are legal partners with, the shoe workers, and that's Bottler, B-O-T-L-E-R, Bottler AI, and it will be doing essentially the same thing as well. So there are very interesting opportunities coming down the road. So to employers, I've targeted this talk to employers, given that Rotary members are leaders in their community, business owners, and so that you would have an idea of what to do. Take your complaint serious, take the complainant seriously. Respond, investigate quickly. There have been case law of investigations that took 2 years to complete, totally unacceptable, and the award made to the complainant reflected that. So respond and investigate quickly, not too quickly, but quickly enough. It must be independent and has to be seen to be independent. Use trained and experienced investigators and identify all the relevant issues and delineate the terms of reference for the investigation. And then in this particular slide, the most important point is at the end. Back off and let the investigator do their job. Now, this is the project background, and I think I've got some time left as well after this. We'll talk about that in a minute. So Justice Canada, it's a 5-year project. We're just starting year 3, so we have 3 more years to go. And there are 22 legal clinics throughout Ontario participating in this. We're to raise awareness. So we want to increase public awareness and knowledge around sexual harassment. One of the ways we're going to be doing that is, well, the next one, educating and informing. We're going to be doing webinars. But we have partnered with Bottler AI. We will be probably partnering with ROSA as well. We have, I just had an article appear in, I think it's Chatham this week, and I apologize that I don't have that name right on the top of my tongue. And that's with our legal clinics, legal rights bulletin. We want to increase public awareness. We want to educate and inform. And I provide webinars, workshops to employers for as many or as few people as you like, and employees and organizations. I need to correct that. And it can be on various topics, and I'll touch on that in just a minute. And I also provide legal advice. So if you know anybody out there who is experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace, or has experienced it, or just wants information about it, that's part of my job too. We want to educate and inform, and we want to provide the advice, and we want to raise awareness. And then you might be asking yourself, why? Why are we still doing this in the year 2021? And it's because the Me Too movement, which occurred 5-6 years ago now, opened up some of the barriers that were keeping this subject underground. And now that it's out there, we want to make sure that people know about it, they know about their rights, what they can do, and that's everyone in the workplace. So this is for questions. And there's one other part that I haven't, so I talked about providing webinars. Today, it's just been a brief, because I was timing it on the Rotary, 20-minute thing for speakers, but we haven't talked about some of the subjects that we can talk about. One is reporting. Who's reporting, who isn't? Disclosures. It's really hard to make that disclosure, and it's hard to receive the disclosure. Traumas, the trauma that people can feel, and the trauma responses, and how the factors in a person's life affect how they respond to the trauma. We haven't talked about any of the common myths. So there are many other webinar possibilities if you would like me to present. So feel free to reach out. Now, I will stop for questions that, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to finish off. What happened to my, oh, there I am. So if you want to learn more, there's my phone number, and that's my email address, titusc@lao.on.ca. I am dipping my toe into the world of social media, such as Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. And I will perfect those down the road, but you can follow me on those. And if you want to know more about the Chatham-Kent Legal Clinic, we can talk about that as well. Does anyone have any questions? Because I've been talking for a while. No? Then I have a scenario. I have a question for you. And you can unmute because I'm curious about your answers. So I've talked about sexual
Carmen,
harassment.
I did see a question from Karen Kirkwood-White.
Oh, good. Okay. Do you want me to unshare my screen?
Yes, that might be the easiest. Then I can see everybody that I can. There we go.
I did it. Okay. All right.
Hi, Carmen. I don't really